By the end of this video, you will have an idea about how you can build your own agents using OpenAI's Agent Kit Builder. And I'll also be teaching you how you can integrate that chatbot into your own website so you can start interacting with it. All right, first thing first, we have to have an OpenAI account in order for us to do any of the things that I'm going to be teaching you today here. So first, if you go to OpenAI API platform and click into that, since I'm already logged in, you can see I get into this page, but if you don't have an account, go ahead and create an account and then come back to this page. Now, if you go to the dashboard here, you will see you have an option for Agent Builder on the left. So just go ahead and click into that. And this is where you're going to be building all your agents and workflows. I will go ahead and immediately click on Create here, and that lands us on this canvas where you can now start building your agents. Now, let's quickly go through all of these nodes on the left here, and then I'm going to explain you what each of them does. So these nodes are categorized into core nodes, tool nodes, logic nodes, and data nodes. So if I go ahead and delete this right here, we have a start node that is provided to you in the beginning, right? And this is where the execution starts. This is like the first step that runs when your agent is called. Yeah, and on the right, you can see we have a start, and you can define the workflow inputs. And input as text is what the user is going to be sending as an input to the chatbot. And this is by default, it's going to be here, right? And there's also state variables. And the way you use state variables is if you need to store something into a global variable that you can access throughout the workflow, you can also make use of that. So if I were to go ahead and click into it, I can have a string of name global, and then I can have a value as global as well. If I can type global and save it, and then what that means is like now I can access this variable named global into any of the other nodes if I need to. Now let's look into the agent node, and this is your AI agent basically, right? So when you click into it, you will see a pan open up on the right hand side, and immediately you would see that this thing is named as agent. So this is where you name your agent. So if you're building an agent that is a website assistant, then you can just name your agent as website assistant here, or whatever relevant agent you're building, you can give it that kind of name here. And instructions is basically the system instructions that you're going to provide, or a system prompt that you're going to provide to your website assistant agent or any kind of agent you're building. And this is what drives how model responds to your questions. And you can also see we have include chat history. All it does is that it stores the chat history into the agent, so it has context around the conversation that it had so far. And you can also choose the model, like what model do you want to go with. There's a multiple choice of models, from reasoning models to coding models and all that. I'm going to leave it as a default to GPT-5. And immediately you also see a reasoning effort, and this is currently set to low, but if you want an agent that spends a lot of tokens, a lot of time on reasoning about any kind of task it's doing, you could set it to high, and then it would continuously think and reason about the task it's performing. And we also have tools, which is really great because it allows you to basically call different kind of things using all the available options here. So you can see first we have an MCP server. So if you want your agent to be calling any kind of MCP server that's out there, or your own MCP server, you can do that. You can click into it, and you will see that there's a lot of OpenAI connectors that's built by OpenAI that's already out there. I looked into it, and they don't do a lot of things right now. For example, if you go to Gmail, you can see it only searches for messages, and then it only reads the recent emails. I would have liked it if it would send emails and do other kind of stuff, but it doesn't do that. And hopefully it's coming in the future. But you also have other options from the Google Drive where you can search the files, list the recent files, and fetch file contents and all of that kind of stuff, right? And there's also third-party servers that you can use. The one that really excites me is Zapier, because it has access to thousands of things in its own realm. So you can also use that. And we have other kind of MCP servers you can use if you'd like. And moving into another one, we also have file search, and this one is really interesting because you can now give it a file. It could be a PDF or a Word document or any kind of file, and as soon as you drop the file, it would create embeddings for that file in the background for you, and then it will be stored in a vector database, and then you can tell your agent to look into the files in order for the agent to answer any kind of questions based off of that file as well. So yeah, here you can see once I selected the file search, it immediately pops up in this window, and now I can upload any kind of file here, or I can even select what kind of vector store I want to store it into. And it's pretty annoying that it doesn't list out all the vector stores that I currently have here, and I have to go click into this. But if I go and click into that, you'll see that I already have a vector store that I created for my resume, so that one of the agents can just go into my resume and then answer any kind of questions related to me, right? But you can create a new one here. Once you click create, you'll see that it opens up a new pane here, and you can name your vector store, and I can call it test, and you can upload any files in this vector store, and just click upload and select any files, and then it would immediately create that for you. And then you can start using those files by providing the agent that file search ability in the tools, which is pretty cool. We also have web search. This is what allows your agent to go into the internet and search for anything. If you like, you can provide some of the website you want to constrain the search to, or you can leave it empty as well, and it would find it on its own which website it would go and interact with. And there's also optional settings here. So if you if you want to set up a user's location, you can do that, the region, city, and all that kind of stuff, right? And moving into another one, we also have a code interpreter one, and this is what you would use to run the Python code and analyze the uploaded files. We're not going to go deep dive into that, but just know that it's available for you there as well. Lastly, we have a output format, and this is what drives the output of the agent that you're building. So by default, it is text, which means that when you ask it any question, it would respond in the text. But if you wanted to respond as a JSON, you can do that as well. And not only that, you can also tell it exactly what kind of JSON you want to respond it as. So for example, if I wanted to respond with a status only for any question that comes in, you can see you can immediately just put in properties at status and then provide a description saying it tells me status of the work, and then your agent, based off of the conversation, would only respond in this JSON format, and then you can use that JSON format into the subsequent path or subsequent flow, and then use that data to do any kind of stuff. What's also really interesting here is you can generate that JSON for you. So if I were to say like insurance claims related data and then click on create, OpenAI will automatically generate that JSON schema for it, which I think is pretty cool. And you can make use of that if you don't want to type it out, all your claims, all your JSON schema yourself as well. And you can see it does a lot of things here. And of course, since we don't need that, I'm going to go cancel out of this. And by the way, the agent's output can also be a widget instead of it being just a text or JSON. And if you click into the widget, you can see you can create a widget. And if I click into that, you will immediately see that there's a lot of widgets that's already available for you to consume. So if I go to the gallery, you can see we have all of these beautiful widgets that you can use in your chat. And when an agent responds, they will be able to use these widgets as a part of their response instead of it just being a text. You can also create your own widget, and OpenAI has made it really simple for you to build the widgets. You can just type something out here. So for example, if I want a flight tracker widget, it will immediately start generating that for you, and you can tweak around with that and download it and use it as a part of your widget in the app. And there you can see it immediately built that widget just off of one prompt. And if you want to use it, you can just download it here and then go back to your agent builder and upload it, that widget that you just downloaded. And that's all about agent. We have another node, which is the end node. So what does end node do? End node is basically just inverse of start, right? So if you want to end any kind of workflow after certain conditions are met, then you would just put it at the end. So for example, if I start here, I want the website assistant to do something and then end it right there. You can just point it to the nodes and then it will do that workflow. It's as simple as that. Moving along, we have notes, and this is just simply something where you can type something just to be able to explain what certain things are doing. And for example, if I want to be more elaborative as to what Website Assistant does, I can type in text like the Website Assistant agent is great at doing XYZ, and then I can drag it and then put it on right on the top here. And then if anyone else was to come into this workflow and then they want to understand what each thing are doing, or you want to create a note and then be more descriptive about all the things it's doing, you can make use of that note node as well. All right, now we have file search on the left. Now, what does file search do? We already touched based on that earlier when I was talking about the Website Assistant agent, but file search it's basically the same. Not only can it be a part of the agent's tools, but you can also have it as a separate node, so it can just perform some kind of search and pass that data over to another workflow step. So for example, if I had something here going on with the start, and then I have an if else statement going on here, and then depending on that if and else, I want to do some kind of file search, and then I want to send that data to another step. For example, let's say the Website Assistant agent, then I'm able to do that. So there's nothing new about the file search here other than what I already told you earlier. Now let's move along to Guardrails. Guardrails is basically like a safety mechanisms that you can implement on your workflow. So for example, if you click into it, you will see on the right hand side that it does a lot of things, including moderation, personally identifiable information, jailbreak, hallucination checks, and all that, right? So you can click into Guardrails and say you want to run your input that the person typed into through a personally identifiable information. And if you click on this I information here, you will see that it detects and redacts personally identifiable information. And there's other things as well. For example, hallucination, you can turn this on, and when you turn this on, you can say like, hey, check for hallucinations based off of this vector database here, and then it would always run the check before responding and be like, hey, so I'm confident that this response is not hallucinated, because based off of the vector database store that I have, I can clearly see that agent is responding in the right way within the threshold that we'll be providing. And there's multiple other things as well, and we can play around with that. But the main thing is for us to either pass it or fail the guardrails, right? So anytime it passes, we can do one step, like go into another step here, or if it fails, then we can immediately end our conversation right there, and dragging that to end will do that for us. So guardrails are pass or fail mechanisms. If it passes, you can continue with your workflow. If it fails, then in most of the cases you will end it. But if you have a custom workflow where you want to like send an email, then you would like pass it to a different agent that handles that kind of stuff. Moving along, we have MCP, and MCP is also same. You can have a MCP server as an identical node as well, so you can run it as one of the steps in the workflow instead of it being part of the tools for the agent. All right, let me clear this out. Now let's talk about the logic nodes. So now we have if and else, and this is very similar to the if and else statement that you would write in any kind of programming language, right? So if you drag that node in the middle, so on the right hand side, you can see that you can provide any kind of case. So if I can be like, hey, if this is true, then I can do a condition matching. So earlier when I created that global state variable, you can see I can immediately access that. I can click into that, I can match that to certain string, and if this condition is met, then I can do one thing, right? I can do one thing if this condition is true. But if it is false, or if this condition is met, then I can do another thing here, which could be something else. So this really branches out the workflow based off of certain conditions, and not only one, you could have multiple conditions going on in here. So if this is just the name of your case, so if the global variable is global, then that would be the case. And I can have another one where if it is like global variable is empty, and then I can click into that and compare that with an empty string. And when that is true, I can do different actions. So this could be a large list of if and else statements, but you get the idea. You can branch out your workflow based off of certain conditions. Similarly, we also have a while loop, and while is pretty similar to the programming while loop as well. As long as certain condition or certain expression is met, it will continuously do that action into the workflow. And that's pretty much it. Now we have user approval on the left. User approval is basically the human in the loop, if you will. And say we have certain actions or a certain workflow where we actually need user to approve it, then we could have a user approval workflow, and depending on whether they approve or reject, we can do certain actions. And transform from the data node is basically what you can use to transform the data. So for example, I have the global state variable from the beginning, right? If I could take that global and then I can just add certain kind of string here as well as a part of the transformation. So this you can get really crazy and complicated depending on your use case with this, but we're not going to really deep dive into it today. But just know that you can use transform to transform your data and then pass it along to a different workflow object or workflow node, or you can also store it as a global variable so every other nodes can access it. And talking about set state, this is also one of the important nodes, and this you can use to assign the certain variables to certain values, so you can use it throughout the execution of the workflow. So for example, I could take the input as text, which was the initial input, and then I can assign it to another variable that is like input from user and just save it. And then now if I were to just drag along this agent node here and go here, immediately I can do a curly braces and then start using that input from user that I set with this set state node in this node as well. So that's really the goal of set state. If you look at the OpenAI's documentation from here, you can see set state is just used to define global variables for use across the workflow, and useful when agent takes an input and outputs something that you will want to use throughout the workflow. So that's how set state can be used. And that's the basics of OpenAI's agent kit and how all the nodes work together to form a workflow. Now we're going to take a look into some of the templates that OpenAI has provided and deep dive into it and see how it works before we start designing our own. All right, so let's go back to our agent builder and go to templates. And we're going to talk about the customer service template over here and then see what each of those things are doing and then get like a better understanding of how these workflows are designed. So immediately right off the bat, you can see we have a start node. And like I said in the beginning, this is just where everything starts. We have input as text that's coming from the user, and they have a guardrail that they have named as jailbreak guardrails, right? And if you look at the right, you can see how they've set it up. Looks like they have a jailbreak enabled, and all that does is like it tries and detects the prompt injections or any kind of other kind of prompts that an agent shouldn't be performing. It detects it and then triggers the guardrail, right? Tripwire, if you will. And yeah, that's the only thing that they have enabled here. And depending on whether it passes or fails, we can see that when it passes, they are going to a classification agent here. And what classification agent does is we have the instructions here, which is clearly defined, that says classify the user's intent into one of the following categories. We have return item, cancel subscription, or get information. That's a very simple instruction provided to it. And if you look at the model they're using GPT 4.1 mini, and the output format is a JSON. And if you click into it, you can see it's a enum type, and they return a classification for the user's intent, and that could either be a return item, cancel subscription, or a get information, one of those three values. And that's all they have. And depending on what the intent was, it will go into a condition check. And the condition check, what they're doing here is they are checking if the input.output parsed from the classification is basically what they're trying to do here is if the response schema here, the classification is the name of the property, right? They're just checking if the classification was the return item, then they will go to a return agent. Similarly, if it was a cancel subscription, then it will go to a retention agent, and get information will be taken care of by information agent. And then in any case, if none of those classifications are true, they will just end the execution flow right there. And when the return agent is called, we can see that it goes into a human in the loop node where it checks for the approval or rejection, and then it will immediately end. It looks like here, as since this is a sample, depending on whether they accept or reject it. And same thing with the retention agent. All it does is we provided an instruction saying like, hey, you are a retention agent. Your goal is to basically stop the person from canceling their subscription, and in order to do that, you would be offering a 20% discount for 1 year. And you can see here we have a tools, and on the tool sections we have a get retention offers, and we haven't talked about it. But if you click into it, this is a tool, but this is a function call. And it took me a while to understand why it was here, because as you can see, if you click into this, all it is just a JSON. It's like, okay, get retention offers. It provides a description and explains what the parameters are and what the current plan is, all that, and then all the required parameters for that. But then you don't really see what it's doing, like what is get retention offers doing, right? If you want to understand how this works, what you need to do is go into the code part over here. And if you click into the agents SDK, you can see the get retention offers is basically a tool as a function, right? So you can define your function tools for the agent here, and if you have a custom code that needs to be implemented, you can use the SDK for the agents from Agents SDK and write the code for that custom execution by using the SDK. At this moment, there's no way for you to write a custom code into the OpenAI's Agent Kit Builder itself. So if you have a workflow where you need to write custom code and call custom functions for doing any kind of things, then you'd have to use Agents SDK. But the good thing is you can at least define those tool calls that the agent is going to make here, and then use the SDK or copy the code down to your VS Code and start immediately changing stuff there. Moving along, we have information agent, and all it does is that it provides answers to any kind of information queries, and they also have information about the companies down here. Nothing too crazy going on in there. And that's pretty much it. This is the example of a sample workflow that's provided by OpenAI. Now let's talk about how you can build your own custom workflow. And in this video, what I'm going to build is a bot for my own AI agents development company. And I'm going to teach you how I built that step by step, so you can also build something similar for your own website. All right, so let's get into it. So before I start designing the workflow, I want to let you know exactly what I'm trying to build, right? So because I have this company for developing AI agents for people, I don't have any kind of chat widget in that website yet. So what I want to build is a chat bot that can tell people all the services that we offer. And this is going to be a really simple chat bot that does exactly that. And in order to show you how Widget works as well, I will also have this another agent whose job would be to produce a widget when anyone asks about the CEO of the company, which is myself. And that's basically going to be it. We can get really crazy with it, but I just want to show you how you can build that and then take that workflow and integrate on the actual website that I'll be doing after this is done. All right, so let's click create, and immediately you can see we have a start node. So first thing I want to add is I want to define a guardrails, right? It's important that we have guardrails. I will join that together. On the guardrails, I will just have like a moderation on and a PIIs on. That way it will check for those two things. And that's all I really need, right? I don't want to worry about hallucinations and all that right now, but if you want to turn that on and point it to your vector store, you can do that as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to create an agent. And so like I said, all I want to be able to do is one, be able to tell what services I offer as a company, and then two, also be able to tell information about the CEO of this company, and that's going to be coming as a a widget, right? So this agent right here, I'm going to call it a triage agent. And the goal of this agent really is to able to tell what the person is trying to ask. All right, so I'm going to quickly paste the prompt here. And what it's really doing is this, it's just trying and identifying whether the person is asking about the CEO of the company, or are they asking about the services that we offer. And that's all it's doing. And that we want to trigger when it passes. And when it fails, I'll just go to the end node, and that's right there. So triage agent, like I said, it's only classifying whether I'm asking about the services or I'm asking about the CEO of the company. So I want to change the output format to a JSON type so we can immediately tell what it's doing, right? So I will add a property and I will call it intent, I think. And I will make it an enum type. And on the description, I'm going to be saying like tells the intent of the user, right? And these are all the possible values that intent can have. And then since we're only dealing with two, which is the services info or the CEO info, I'm just gonna have a couple of those enums and then I'll update it. So now what this agent is gonna do is going to produce one of the two responses, that being one being services info, another being CEO info. Now we will have another node here, and that node is going to be an if and else check node. And this is where we would check what triage agent is responding with. Now, since we already know we have a JSON schema coming out of it with an enum value that is one of services info or the CEO info, we can go to if and else, and then I can type it here, services info case, and then for the condition, you can immediately see we already have the triage agent's intent right here. So I will click into that, and then I will compare that with services info. Now, if it is services info, I'm going to do one thing, and if it is CEO info, and that I can compare using the same intent, comparing that with double equals and CEO info, then I want to do something else. So that will be that. And then I will also have an else statement that I will be doing literally nothing. Cool. So we have a couple of these checks. Now let's create a services agent. For that, I will drag it open on the new node. I will click agent. Now this agent is the one that's going to be handling all the services related question. And for the prompt here, let me paste the prompt quickly. And all I'm doing here is I'm saying like, hey, you're an awesome website assistant agent. You have a company that specializes in all these things. Your name is Vladdy, and you'll respond to user questions as this name in a very conversational manner, and also keep it short and sweet, right? And so where does this services agent get information about the company, right? So for that, I want to tell it like use the available tool, file search tool, to access information about the company before responding. So what I'm going to be doing is providing access to all the services we offer and all the company details as a vector database or file search tool to this agent. So if I go to tools, I can click on file search, and I will click on select vector store, and then let's go ahead and create a new vector store here by clicking into that. And if I click create, it will immediately create a new vector store for me. I'll be calling this vector store as company information and services, and I can attach files here, clicking on add files. I'll click upload, and I have this PDF about my company where I built all the agents. So I'll click open to that. It will upload that file, I'll attach it. Now this will create a vector embeddings for this PDF, and then it will be stored, and that's it. Yeah, and now I have a vector store that has a company readme PDF, and for some reason it didn't take the name, so I'm going to rename it company info and then save it. And if I go back to my agent here, now I can put in the ID of this vector right in here. That is the company info, and select that. And that way, Services Agent now has the ability to use the tool, and that tool is basically a file search tool that can go into the file, read into the data, and be able to answer to the users based off of that information. Well, that's good. Now let's look into the CEO info, and this is also going to be very similar, but this agent right here, we will call it CEO info agent, and all it does is same thing as the services agent, but instead of returning the output as text, it will return the output as a widget. So I'm going to quickly paste the prompt here. I'm saying like you are a CEO info agent and your goal is to provide information about the CEO of the company. You can analyze the resume of the CEO using the tool and use the data to return the output format. And for the tools, I'm again going to be giving it a file search like I did for the other agent, and this time I'm going to be using the resume store vector database for it to be able to access my resume, and click into that, select, and now it has access to my resume that is stored in the resume store vector database. And for the output format, instead of it being a JSON or text, I'm going to make it a widget, and that widget will be created manually here, and I would be like a simple resume viewer with minimal data. And as you can see, we have a quick resume viewer that is right up here designed for us, and I'm kind of happy with it. If you're not, you can also tweak the HTML here yourself. Once you're happy, go ahead and download it. I'm going to go ahead and download that, go back to my agent builder, and then I'm going to upload that resume mini widget, open and close it out. Now you can see the output format for this agent is going to be a resume mini. And in any case, if none of those two matches, I'm just going to end my workflow right there. And that gives us a very simple workflow where we can ask the bot about the company info or the information about the CEO. Now to test it out, just click on preview, and I'm going to ask, what kind of services do you offer? And there you go. It says, hey, I'm Vladdy. Here's what we offer: custom AI agents development, AI consulting, MCPs, system integrations, voice agents, and all that. Now let's test our CEO info part. So tell me about your CEO. You can see it's going to Guardrails, goes to the triage agent. Now to trigger the CEO. Looks like I made a mistake while comparing the CEO info here, so I'm going to quickly update that, and then let's test the CEO info again. So tell me about the CEO of the company. Now you can see it goes to triage agent, goes to CEO info, and then now our CEO info node is activated, and ultimately it should give us a widget with the information about the CEO. And you can see we have a widget. As a response, it tells about me, what I am, and all the skills I have and every places I have worked in the past. Well, cool. That's how you build your own workflow as well. And once you're ready with it, and once you're satisfied with your testing and all that, you can now actually start integrating on your own website. So in order to do that, if you go and click on the code up top, you have two different options. One is to use the agents SDK, and this one, of course, is more useful if you have custom code and, for example, the function calling things that I showed you earlier. But we're going to stick with just ChatKit and use the workflow ID. And now I'm going to show you how you can use this workflow ID and integrate that on your own website so you can start chatting with it. All right, so if you go to the quick start here, OpenAI tells you exactly what kind of things you need to do to start embedding on your own website. So of course, we already finished up doing the creating an agent part. So one of the first things you need to do is, of course, have a backend for your application. And the reason for that is because OpenAI expects us to send a client token, and that's the way you verify that you are the owner of the workflow. So you write an endpoint on your backend that serves that client token, and then the chat takes that client token and sends it to OpenAI for any interaction that it does, so that OpenAI can validate that it's coming from you, the authorized owner of this workflow builder. And to do that, it's really simple. You just pass in the OpenAI API key and then create an endpoint that your front end can call. And on the front end side, of course, you will call the endpoint that you just wrote, and then pass in the workflow ID that you want to trigger and device ID and all that good stuff, and then get back the client secret. And in order for you to display the chat, OpenAI has provided a ChatKit React library that you can use, and ultimately just pass in the script tag here in index.html so your app can communicate with OpenAI. Cool, so let's quickly dive into it. What I have here on the screen is my own website, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of that here. If you go to agentsdevelopment.com, you can see right now that I have this website, and currently it's listing all the services that I offer under my business, and there's no chatbot. So what we want to do is use the workflow we built earlier and integrate that on this website. So let me open up my VS Code. All right, so the way this project is structured is I have both backend and front end on the same repository. So any kind of backend work would go inside the backend folder, and then I have a Next.js app inside the SRC folder where all the front end related code is set up. Now, first of all, let's go to the backend, and the first thing you need to do is, of course, install the OpenAI package. So if I go to my requirements.txt, first thing I want to be able to do is install the OpenAI package, because this has all the functions and libraries that you need in order for you to start integrating it. And once I have that, I'm just going to go into my backend and install the OpenAI package. Once that is installed, let me go to my endpoints folder and then create a new file, and I'm going to call it chatkit.py. And in here, I'm going to paste in this code, and this is really simple. What it's doing is I have a new route that I'm going to call /session, and then I'm getting my OpenAI API key. And remember, that's important, is in my .env file. And once the client is set up, one of the important things here is during the recording of this video, the client create method is actually inside of the beta folder, so I'm having to do this. But when you're doing it, it might be similar to what OpenAI is saying here, which is directly accessing the chatkit sessions.create. But for now, the idea is the same. It's just that the package is still in beta and they haven't released the new version yet, so I'm having to do this. And I'm directly hard coding the workflow ID here because I don't have any other workflows. So anytime someone asks for a session from the front end, I'm just going to give them a client secret for this specific workflow ID. Now that it's set up, of course, I want to be able to expose this. So I'm going to go to my main.py and add a new router. And that's it with that for the backend. The sole purpose of a backend is to provide the client token for the client app so that it can start using that to call OpenAI's APIs. All right, now let's start making changes on the front end. So if I go to the source folder, first thing I want to be able to do is, of course, grab that API token that I just created from my backend, right? So I'm going to, in the data file folder, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it chatkit.ts, and in there I'm going to paste in this code, and all it does is, and I'm going to directly hardcode my backend API here, and this might be different for you depending on what port you're using, but all it does is that it fetches that token from the backend that we just wrote and returns the client secret from it. This is a really simple implementation of grabbing that token, and this function is getting exported as get chatkit session token. Now, for the front end, we need to also install the chatkit React package, as you saw in OpenAI's documentation. So let's do that, which is npm install OpenAI chatkit React. There you go. Now that it is installed, what I'm going to do is now create my own component that would be the chat component that would be displayed on the website. So if I do that and go to chat component.tsx and then paste in this code here, it's a really simple code. So first thing, of course, you want to do is use the chatkit, use chatkit hook from the chatkit React, and what you need to pass in here is the API parameter. That API parameter is an object that takes the client secret. And since we already wrote the method that gets the client secret in a different file, I can specify the method that gets it. And everything below here is the customization that you can do on the chatkit. So if you go back to the OpenAI's documentation here, you can actually create your own chatkit as well and customize it depending on how you want to make it look. So for example, here, this is the default one. So what I did here is I just went to the code and then I copied everything from the theme all the way to the start screen. But again, you can customize like what kind of prompts that you want to show here, what would be the placeholder for the message. You can see it says like message the AI. You can be like, say something, and then it will all get updated real time. And you can take this JSON and then stuff it on your code so you have a customized UI. And that's exactly what I did. I have just this pasted, going back to my code, and nothing crazy. So now that that is there, another thing I need to do is now use this component in my app. So if I go to my app.tsx, I can now put that component right underneath here and call it chat component and import it. There you go. Now, lastly, we also need to provide that link on our index.html. So if I go here and copy pasta, whatever OpenAI wanted me to copy, which is this, and put it on my header script here, then that should be all the things you need to do. Now let's test it out. Sweet. So my app is running on localhost 8080. So let's load it up, and you can immediately see that my chat on the right hand side is loaded up. Now let me ask it, tell me about the services you offer. And just like that, you can see we got the response back from the chat into our own website. And that, my friend, is how you can build your own chatbot with a custom workflow and integrate that on your own website and start interacting with it. And I really hope you found this video useful. If you made it this far, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and be a part of this community. I'll be uploading a lot more tutorials like this in the future.